With so much happening in our community and nation that is so divided, we must take the opportunity to look back together so that we can move forward together. Register now for Justified Anger's courses Black History for a New Day, starting in February. The course is taught by UW-Madison professors and Black community leaders with the purpose of understanding how the African American experience has shaped the world we all live in, and how allies can find roles supporting racial justice today. Learn more at justifiedanger.com. Murder for Two, anyone? Everyone's a suspect in this multi-award-winning two-person musical comedy. One actor investigates, the other plays every suspect, and both play the piano in this whip-smart, winking homage to an old-fashioned theatrical mystery. Murder for Two runs February 21st through March 2nd at the Capital City Theater Core, located on University Avenue on Madison's west side. Get tickets at capitalcitytheater.org. Today on CityCast Madison. What do we really know about the age of the dinosaurs? Well, some Madisonian researchers just gave us a much better picture. Dave Lovelace, vertebrate paleontologist at UW's Geology Museum, and his team made a major discovery that they just published this month. They found the oldest dinosaur fossils to date in the entire northern hemisphere. Go Badgers! And the finding upends decades of thinking about when and where dinosaurs walked this earth. I sat down with museum scientist Dave Lovelace to learn more about this discovery, its magnitude, and the team's partnerships with Native communities in Wyoming around where the fossils were found. It's Wednesday, January 22nd. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Dr. Dave Lovelace, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Dun, 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 dun.
The life track of my life.
You discovered a new dinosaur. No big deal.
Just another day at the office.
Well, it's actually pretty old, but new to us. And I don't want to butcher its name. So what's it called?
Avetum bonduivici.
Ooh. It's
Yeah.
gorgeous. It's gorgeous. So what do we know about the characteristics of the dinosaur?
Avetum it's a little dinosaur. And we know based on not only its age and where it is and where it fits in the family tree that it would have been a relatively small animal. So 3 feet long from the tip of the tail to the tip of the nose. And probably it would have stood roughly a foot high at the hips, maybe a little bit taller. So in terms of dinosaurs, it's pretty small.
It's a little guy.
Totally. It would have been feathered for sure. And so it would have been cute little fuzzy dinosaur running around.
I love it. Well, it sounds it's long, but it's not that tall. So it could kind of knock into things as it's moving around. And I love the whole feathers. I'm pro that dinosaurs had feathers. I love seeing the renditions and I loved seeing the rendition of this too.
Thanks. Yeah, they get to be really kind of colorful and more dynamic. I mean, they look better with feathers regardless.
Okay, I'm glad we're on the same team. And speaking of teams, your team discovered these bone fragments in 2013. So over a decade ago, but y'all published and broke this news this month. Why did it take so long from discovery to publication?
It's all the reasons. It's not just because I'm really slow at doing science. When we found the bone, the first fragments, and we're like, wait, this is a femur. It's an upper leg bone. And it's a dinosaur. We could tell in the field it had characteristics that we knew it was a dinosaur, but that's about all we knew at the time. And so we needed to take it back to the lab, clean it up a little, study it, look at all the other fragments of bones that we found in the same area. And even with that, a year or so later, we were very confident what we had was a dinosaur. It was early diverging on the Saurischian line. So there's 2 major groups of dinosaurs, right? There's the Saurischians, which they lead up to things like the sauropods, the long neck long-tailed dinosaurs, and then the theropods, the meat eaters. The other line is the ornithischians, which is your duck-billed dinosaurs, stegosaur, and triceratops, right? So we knew it was on the Saurischian line, so it was either a theropod or it was a sauropodomorph, like something that's the ancestor of sauropods. We didn't know exactly where. We needed to do the analysis. But given what we thought of the age of the rock that we were in, we thought it was probably close to 230, but we had absolutely no evidence of that. And outside of some small loose connections. So I basically had to spend the next almost decade building up the story with all these little pieces that were going to help test this idea. It's 230 million. And ultimately that led to radiometric dates that told us that it was the age that it is. But it was actually all the other work that we did over a period of that decade from the stratigraphy. So we're measuring the rocks all over the state to try to figure out the history of the rock formation itself, just the rocks that this thing's preserved in. We're looking at all the fossils that we can find. So we're looking at pollen grains. We're looking at plant fragments.
And you're out there in Wyoming.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
With UW researchers, yeah.
So yeah, we do most of our field work in Wyoming, and we're working in the Triassic rocks of what's called the Chugwater Group. And the upper portion of that is a formation called the Paposia Formation. And that's what we were really doing, is we were studying the Paposia. And the thing about that is it really hadn't been studied for half a century. It was a joke back where I was doing my undergraduate, that the professors at the University of Wyoming would send you out to the field to study the Chugwater if they were really, really mad at you, because there's no fossils. It's
so
boring.
You found it in a really tricky spot.
Yeah. And I was like, well, why are there no fossils? We had to go look and figure that out. And that was part of this problem, right? We found some stuff. It's really cool. But there's no background information, which there often is in a lot of these rock units. When we're going out and finding dinosaurs, we have a pretty good idea of what's going on because it's been studied for 100 years.
And I'm not trying to give you too much guff for it being 10 years. When we're talking about hundreds of millions of years of history, you know, 10 years of science is not that long.
No, totally. It's absolutely my MO. I don't think that I've published on many things that I found until about 10 years later, almost 20 in one case. So it happens. It's just the nature of trying to figure out problems, right? So yeah, it's the science, but in this case, I really had to build a story to do it. And I'm super happy that it happened this way. It's just coincidence or serendipity that building that story actually made the whole thing so much more rich and informative. And personally, it had a deeper connection because of kind of the story of how we came up with the name for this animal. So yeah, it was a lot leading up to this, but here we are.
And we're in the weeds of history, but this finding, as I understand it, is like pretty historic. Can you talk about, what this means in the big picture for UW-Madison and your department and, the greater paleontological community?
Yeah, sure. So I still laugh. I will say this, I'm sure, many times, but it's two small fragmentary bones. And if you look at the ankle bone that we study, it's about the size of the last digit on your pinky. And the femur, the head of the upper leg bone, is probably about the size of the last digit on your thumb. So we're talking pretty small bones, but they are super important. And so for our museum, it's one of many amazing specimens. I mean, our museum is small, but it's mighty. So it's also special to us because it's part of our last 10 years worth of work. And we are an undergraduate facing or forward unit, like the geology museum. That's what we do, is we provide opportunities for undergraduate students. Mostly that's kind of the fun part of my job. Is I have a lot of volunteers from all over campus, and they're all part of this story in some respect too, because they helped put pieces of data together that really led us to where we are now. And in terms of the science, yeah, this specimen overthrows effectively a 30-year standing idea on the origin and evolution of dinosaurs.
No big deal.
But a year from now, people are going to look back and go, oh yeah, cool. Yeah, NBD,
It's very cool. I read that it is the oldest dated dinosaur in the northern hemisphere. Is that accurate?
It is. We had The previous oldest is this dinosaur called Lepidus, and it is from the West Texas Otis Chalk area. So kind of the red rocks of the West Texas, pretty low in section. And they knew based on the rocks it was somewhat older than 221 million, but they didn't have a bottom date. And so they weren't sure exactly what the age was. And the authors were very appropriately conservative in their assignment of an age, because it would change a whole lot of stories if they're like saying, oh yeah, it's like 230 million. But that was the previous oldest dinosaur for quite a while until ours came along, and we have a radiometric date. It says it's 230. It really supports it. The date is actually higher in stratigraphic section. So that means that we know our dinosaur is older than that date. It could be even older. I just don't have any means to say that. So currently that's where it stands based on those data. The dinosaur that was the previous oldest, actually, based on all this other work that we've done, helped pull that down to make it actually older than they thought it was. And so it's several million years younger than ours, but it is definitely within the same kind of cohort of dinosaurs.
We found the oldest.
Yeah. That's that. I mean, I'm going for the superlatives, right? Like, this is the oldest. It's the smallest. It's the first. I swear that's a trend in dinosaur paleontology, is you always want the superlatives. But this is the oldest. It was first, when we first discovered it, it was the oldest in Wyoming. Then it's the oldest in North America. And now we have really strong evidence it's the oldest in the northern hemisphere. But we can go even farther if we restrict it to the equator, because all the oldest dinosaurs are from the southern hemisphere, from about 35 degrees latitude and further south at higher latitude.
Yeah, why is that? I hadn't really known this until preparing to talk to you. Why does the southern hemisphere have older dinosaurs than the northern?
So a lot of it is what we call geological contingency. So it's just the fact that in the southern hemisphere, during this time, we were part of the supercontinent Pangaea. And if you look at a map of Pangaea, it looks like a gigantic letter C, with the middle of it being right about the equator. And it has one half going up north and one half going south. In the southern hemisphere, that's where a lot of these outcrops of this age are really well exposed along the flanks of the Andes and along the basins in Brazil. There's also similar exposures in South Africa and some in India. And even though India's in the northern hemisphere now, it was part of the southern hemisphere continent.
It's shifted.
Yeah, that's the ideas that we have. A lot of these dinosaurs are from there. The question was, why don't we find any from between 30 degrees south and 30 degrees north? And that's the geological contingency. That part of the continent, of the supercontinent, just doesn't preserve rocks of this age. And there's lots of reasons. There's rifting that was going on. There were mountains that were there at the time. All of these things are factors that lead to either the lack of preservation, or even if it was preserved there, maybe something came through, like a mountain uplifted and all those rocks eroded away, but they just don't exist. So the data is not accessible because it literally is not there. That's part of the issue, is that we have all this stuff from high latitudes in the southern hemisphere, nothing from the equator. And in the northern hemisphere, we just didn't appear to have the right aged rock that was terrestrial and like not ocean rock. And the areas that did seem to have the right age just weren't producing any fossils. And that's been well, if it's not producing fossils, it's because they're not there. It was a harsh environment. So that became the story, is that there's these climatic barriers, these belts of aridity that prevented dinosaurs from migrating to the northern hemisphere until the climate changed later in the Carnian, around 234 million. And we have this period of higher humidity and it's raining a lot more. That's what allowed these dinosaurs to migrate across. So that had been the prevalent hypothesis. And that's ultimately what our little dino kind of goes and says, yeah, no, that's not it.
Little but mighty, like you said. This is so exciting, and you're excavating the story of dinosaurs' history and so much about the planet. I am literally geeking out. I'm having way too much fun, and we're not done yet. We are talking with Dr. Dave Lovelace about their amazing discovery of the oldest dinosaur ever found to date in the Northern Hemisphere. And we'll be back in a moment after a quick break.
Do you plan your vacations based on whether you can speak the local language? With Babbel, language no longer has to be the barrier. I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast, and I went to Mexico City a couple of years ago with my girlfriend, who's a native Spanish speaker, so I just let her do all the talking, like all of it. I adored the city, and now I'm going to go back in a couple of months, but with my college roommates, who are a bunch of middle-aged men, none of us Spanish speakers. When I was younger, I might not have been bold enough to do that. But now I'm not anxious because Babbel has me covered. Thanks to Babbel, I know how to order a taxi, how to give directions, how to order in a restaurant, all the small and useful bits of language that make international travel easier. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or whatever pace you choose. And because conversing is the key to really understanding each other in a new language, Babbel is designed using practical, real-world conversations, especially the sort you need while traveling. Food, how to get places. Babbel's tips and tools are inspired by the real-life stuff you actually need when communicating. With a focus on conversation, you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. So I hope I'll see you in Mexico in a couple of months. Or, as we say, espero verte en Mexico en un par de meses. So let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting CityCast listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/citycast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/citycast. Spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Babbel.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
I'm just having so much fun imagining you guys finding the fossil and like, what did you feel like? Like, what was that discovery like in the moment? You said you had an idea like, oh, this is a dinosaur right away.
We had a pretty big field crew. It was my first time taking undergraduates in my position. And there's 14 students, and we ended up splitting up that day. And so it was me, another colleague who was visiting, and 3 students. And so we were out prospecting this new area. And it was super exciting because Google Earth changed my life. I could actually see where the rock is exposed. And so we're like, hey, let's go here. It's this tiny little outcrop in the middle of nowhere. And we had to ford a river to get across, and we're all this kind of adventure. And that's all we were doing. We were like, hey, let's have a fun day and go check out something different. And then when we found this, it's like, it's raining. It's otherwise kind of a miserable day, but we were finding good stuff. So it was fun. And my undergrad, Garrett Johnson, came up and he's like, hey, Dave, what's this? And I'm like, oh, that's a chunk of bone for sure. And so we're looking and kind of digging stuff and like, that's always the answer. What's that? I don't know, but it's something.
Yes, that's a dream moment.
Right? And so we collect that. We're working around and end up looking back at this. And my colleague and I are looking and she's like, that's a dinosaur. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, it is. And we're like, wow, cool. Okay, put it in the bag. We grabbed some more specimens, that fragments of bone. And that was kind of it. And we're like, we're pretty sure we have this. And we were really excited. But again, looking back on it, I'm like, I was an idiot. Why didn't I like celebrate and like just throw
like back to work?
Seriously, it was like, really, come on. So take a breath. But I didn't. So we were excited, but it was definitely not over the top.
That's so funny. Sometimes the moment passes us by and then we recognize later like, holy F balls. But it's so incredible. And I find the name really fascinating. And I want to ask, like, how did you land on the name Avetum Bondui Vici?
So Avetum Bondui Vici.
Let's do it together.
Avetum Bondui Vici.
Bondui Vici.
There you go.
For folks listening, Bondui Vici.
So that name, it has a lot of importance to me. I mean, the short answer is it is one of the first animals named in the Shoshone language. There's one other that was named, and it was also by our students and our crew. That was named October of last year. So 2024. And that one is Ninimbihan Dukuduka. And that is Eastern Shoshone as well. And that's part of the result of a partnership that we've built with Eastern Shoshone tribe and specifically with the Fort Washakie School on the Wind River Reservation. So
Which is in Wyoming?
That is in Wyoming. That's kind of in central Wyoming, and it is pretty much in the center of the field areas that we work. So we work all around the reservation pretty much in every direction. We don't work on reservation land itself. They're a sovereign nation, and that is something that we wanted to be very respectful and cognizant of. So we work on land managed by Bureau of Land Management or state agencies like the Game and Fish or the state of Wyoming. So we're out there prospecting, finding this stuff, and we're realizing, this is really important. And the partnership that we developed was, it has a longer and deeper story, but that's the end result, is that we're still working with students and we're still active in programming. We're hoping to get students again out to the field this year. We've taken them on field trips. We do a lot via Zoom. So yeah, it's part of this partnership, which is really cool. What is special to me, and then kind of we're almost going backwards in the story, but the students themselves, so it was 7th graders that went to the field with us. We talked about kind of the Western science perspective, why we see the rock the way we do, interpreting the story. And we're telling them about the animals and what we're finding. And then the elders got to tell the stories of how their interpretations of the rock and how they see things. And it was just this amazing opportunity for our college students to experience this and listen and hear these stories and realize that there is a wealth of knowledge that does not belong to Western science. And being able to share that was pretty transformational for a lot of us. And so the 7th graders are out there, and they're 7th graders. Middle schoolers are just exactly as you would expect. And they were having fun, running around the rocks, being goofy. But at the same time, they were like, this is amazing. We're finding these fossils. And this is like the first time that some of them have experienced something like this, and getting to find something on their own and hold it. And like, yeah, you're holding a tooth of a gigantic predator from 230 million years. That's kind of cool. And so they're language learners, right? They're learning the Shoshone language, and they're working with the elders on this. And so they came up with ideas that they thought of. And some of them were very classic 7th grade ideas. And sorry, but Dino McDinoface didn't come into play there.
Yeah, that one got pushed.
Yeah, but there were some brilliant ideas that were just beautiful. And the elders, specifically Reba Turan, who's also a co-author on the paper, came up with the idea for Avetum Bandui Vici. And so she's the one that ultimately picked or chose or developed the name based on the history of the language. And the interpretation and the work with the 7th graders was awesome and really fun to see. But this is 100% them. This has nothing to do with our concepts or our ideas. And so they thought, yeah, this is a really old dinosaur. And so they called it Avetum, which translates pretty much roughly as long ago. And so, yeah, cool. It was long ago. That's true. And Bandui Vici is their word now, the Shoshone word for dinosaur. But dinosaur is in many senses a Western construct. And so that is a word that has a double meaning. Bandui Vici means dinosaur, but it also is broken into components. Ban is water, and water is hugely important culturally. And Dui Vici is the handsome young man. And so Bandui Vici is the name for these salamanders that are in the area. And they're dark black in color with these beautiful, super bright yellow stripes and dots. And they're gorgeous little creatures. And so that was what they called the handsome young men, was the water dogs or salamanders. So it has two meanings. It has the water dog and dinosaur. And so in this context, long ago dinosaur is the name.
That's incredible. And the energy behind it, like I'm just glowing seeing you glow, talking about the incredible depth and importance of this partnership and recognizing that Western science has had the reins on language and storytelling, and to be including and even centering voices of Native folks when very likely, of course, the reservations shrunk in terms of the land and whose land it is. All of that is extremely complex, and making space to center Native storytelling is just incredible part of this story and discovery.
It's probably, for me, it's like one of the favorite parts of my career so far. And like, yeah, we're talking about the dinosaur and that's fun and that's the science part, but I don't know. This is the story to me. This is what I live for. So my excitement isn't, let's go find another new animal. It's, I can't wait to get the students out into the field and see what kind of shenanigans we get up to and what kind of things we find and talk about. So yeah.
Yeah. And so will you be continuing to work with Shoshone leaders outside of this discovery?
We will, for sure. We continue to work with educators and the Fort Washakie School students on the reservation, and that a lot of the students are both Eastern Shoshone and from the Northern Arapaho tribe, which both are present on the Wind River Reservation. And we're working with elders whenever it's appropriate. Their time is extraordinarily valuable, and so we're trying to be respectful of that. But they come in and, again, share stories. They will do appropriate things. When they open up a new fossil or they're doing something like that, the elders will come in and they'll cedar the students and cedar the fossils. And it's very important for protecting themselves and the animal in the fossil. And so this is something that they come in and share with us that we see. We just had 2 students who visited for a week to do some hands-on activity with the class. And so they were incorporated into a lot of the practices and shown and taught what's going on and why. And so, yeah, we still work with the Northern Arapaho TIPO as well as the Eastern Shoshone TIPO. And those are the official units, the Tribal Historic Preservation Office, on various projects. And so, yeah.
Well, that's fantastic, Dave. That is fantastic. It's so nice to meet you. So grateful that you're coming on and telling us about the discovery and then the absolutely amazing work that you're doing in collaboration with different Native groups. It's very, very heart-filling. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
We hope to have you back for your next discovery and your next amazing collaboration to hear about it.
I'm here for it. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
That's Dave Lovelace, vertebrate paleontologist at UW's Geology Museum, talking about his team's discovery of the oldest dinosaur fossils to date in the Northern Hemisphere. That's all for today, here on CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin. If you enjoyed the show, why not share this episode with a dinosaur lover? We'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, take good care.